that some people are very positive about the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, as we were discussing a bit earlier. People like Owen Jones and Andrew Fisher have said that it's good to get back behind Labour because he's made some policy announcements in his speech, and there's this idea that Labour is the best of two alternatives, and therefore we should just go for backing Keir Starmer. So we're going to have a discussion, a debate on this issue of whether the left should back Keir Starmer, should get behind Keir Starmer, and we've got different opinions to start the debate. I've got Brian Basham, who's been on the show quite a few times, who seems to have gone over to seeing Starmer as the person we should back. Are you there, Brian?
I'm trying to mouth my response to your view that I've gone over. Yeah, I am here.
You are there, and we're going to have a debate between you and Ben Timberley, who's also been on the show from behind Labour. And what we're looking for is some kind of cathartic discussion without any bun throwing. Brian, what you didn't seem to be too keen on Starmer the last time you were on this show. Why have you changed your mind? Have you changed your mind, or was this something that it was maybe bit of you before? You thought Starmer was okay, and now it's changed. What is it about this situation we're in now that makes you think we should, on the left, fall in behind Starmer?
Well, I think I can say I'm firmly of the left. I'm even wearing my Bernie Sanders T-shirt to demonstrate my commitment in some small way. And I've written that I believe that Starmer actions, as a result of what I learned in the Al Jazeera programs, shouldn't be a leader of any party, let alone the Labour Party. So I thoroughly condemn him for what he's done. To the left, it's Stalinist, and I abhor it, and I'm ashamed. So let me start from there. However, we got to get rid of the Tories. I've been investigating. I was an investigative journalist for years, and then I ran a communications company, which was hugely successful because it was based on investigations. I'm one of the founders of the Centre for Investigative Journalism, and I've been investigating these people for decades. And this is the worst party I've ever come across for direct, blatant corruption. That's all I can say. Blair was awful. I was head of fundraising for Labour in 94, 96 with John Norton, to whom I was introduced by my friend Mo Molam. And I resigned from that role. I went to Margaret McDonagh when Tony Blair brought in his friend Michael Levy, who went for high-level donor campaign. John and I were trying to have a widespread campaign to have small donors, much like Corbyn did. And I went to Margaret McDonagh and said, look, if somebody gives you £100,000, they want something, they give you $1 million, they demand it. Now, the new Philip Green, who will emerge as absolutely odious, is a man called Crispin Odey. And he is effectively dictating policy. He's a multi-millionaire, so he's probably a billionaire by now. He shorted the pound after having dinner with Kwasi Kwarteng. He's in a position to put Kwasi Kwarteng into the role of Chancellor. He supported Truss. I've written about it. I'll send you something. It's too long to go into, but it's absolutely straightforward corruption. And they are interested only in two things. They are interested in getting rid of regulation, which they package nicely as getting rid of red tape, but it actually means getting rid of those regulations that protect us all. So they want to get rid of labour law, they want to get rid of human rights, they've got rid of Monopoly Merger Commission, the OFT, and all those other, which has led to huge globalisation. And they want low tax, so they make even more money. And it's as simple as that. There are only two policies. There are
Oh, Brian, you've
rid of regulation, low tax. So there we are. We've got to get rid of them, and that's the only reason I'm supporting Starmer, because once he's in power, we can push for change, because we have unions, we have the left on our side, and that's the time to put pressure on Starmer. There's no point in pushing on him at the moment, because he doesn't give a fuck, and he's not going to change, and he's got no power to bring about change. So that's my case.
so wait till he gets into power and then pressure him. But there's one other aspect of what you say.
Absolutely.
That just
the only thing I can think of doing.
There's only one other part that I'd like to ask you is do you think an alternative party of the left is a possibility? Do you think that could be set up to challenge Starmer?
No. As I say, I was a journalist for a long time. There's a woman called Leni Riefenstahl who was Hitler's filmmaker, and John Pilger wrote about it the other day. And if you look it up, it's how propaganda works, and it's well worth watching, and it's absolutely spot on. Pilger's a great man, and she coined the phrase "the submissive void," and she was making films for the submissive void. These are people who don't know anything about anything really; they just go with their emotions, and that's what she did. And I'm afraid the Starmer has captured the submissive void. Truss had it, but now she's got so embarrassing that I suspect there's going to be a switch of some kind. I don't know what's going to happen. It could all turn. It could all turn. I've been in touch with all various people I know, and I've written to commentators, and I'm sure there will be a shitstorm coming up focused on this man. Crispin Odey.
My namesake.
Yes, Crispin Odey, but he's.
There's not many Crispins, and the only other one that's out there is a crook. That's nice to know.
Crispin Odey. So that's it. We've got to get rid of it, and then work out a coherent plan to appeal to the youth. I've been studying that immensely, and I've written a paper which has gone into the left, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to press for change, but only once he's in power, because we can't stop him getting into power now.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. Ben, now you've heard Brian's arguments there. There's no point. Just Starmer's going to get in, and we've got to pressure him then. That's the only way we can actually be effective on the left. What do you say about that?
Well, but before I say anything, I completely understand where Brian's coming from. His views are educated and sound, and I've got huge respect for the work that he's done and the position he's taken here. And I can understand how he's arrived at the position he has. I think there's three elements of this that people probably talk about when we discuss whether to get behind Starmer and Labour or not. And that comes down to winning elections. It comes down to organising and integrity, and it comes down to the court of public opinion. I think in terms of what Brian's talking about is, from my perspective, he's saying let's win the election, let's get a nominally left wing or centre left party into power, and let's use that platform for change. And I can completely understand why he's arrived at that opinion, even if I completely disagree with it. In terms of the organising and integrity side, I think we can all agree on this call that the Labour Party has no integrity, that it has completely eschewed and removed its ability to organise from a grassroots level completely. And I also think in terms of the court of public opinion, I don't think anybody believes the Labour Party. I think they look at the Labour Party as a completely dishonest, corrupt, criminal organisation, which, as we have seen in the Labour files, it absolutely is. So I think the crux of Brian's strategy comes down to getting into a position of power and leveraging that position of power for positive change. Now, if the Labour Party wasn't what it is, which is essentially an organisation that represents private money, foreign agencies, foreign governments, and others, I would completely agree with Brian. But I think in this case, we don't have a Labour Party that will work in our interests of British people, of the left, or anyone at all. I don't think there's any possibility for that to happen. we need a completely new body. I don't say that lightly. I understand the century of history behind the Labour Party, the recognition of the brand and the systems that it has in place. But I gave up believing that Labour had any sort of real opportunity to deliver on those promises around 5 years ago, when I began to understand that the Labour Party is essentially a mafia organisation with a constitution that it moves to fit whatever it wants. So it means that it doesn't matter how hard we try to take over the NEC, how hard we try to make regional organisations reflect regional issues and regional concerns. It doesn't matter what we do, they will always have the money, the power and the smear machine to be able to take back control of the NEC and completely disenfranchise us at any point. So I agree, we've got to get into a position of power to leverage that change on a governmental scene and on a policy scene. But we can't do that with the Labour Party. It is specifically now designed to completely block and frustrate any entryism or any control or influence from the left so that we cannot get in and do anything. It is essentially a trap without going too deeply into that.
Okay, look, I'm going to move on to some other speakers and come back to you both at the end. Is that okay? Because there's lots of people who've asked to come in and some have got no time to wait. So I'm going to bring in Deepa Driver. Are you there, Deepa?
I am, Crispin. Hi.
Good
morning.
There you are, Deepa. Now, what do you say to what Brian's saying, for example, that we have no chance of Starmer is going to win the next election and we have no other way of influencing this than when he is in power? Are you muted? Oh, I'm so sorry. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry, I have this habit of pressing the mute button, so you can't hear my kids, and I'd done that. I think one of the things I'd like to say is that, firstly, let's look at Starmer's position on key issues, right? Whether it is war, whether it is the NHS, whether it is public ownership, whether it's freedom of speech, whether it's inequality, lobbying, false allegations of anti-Semitism, weaponization of racism, challenge to establishment power, or last but not least, solidarity with the unions. Is he any different from the Tories? No, absolutely not. The next thing is, okay, let's think what kind of people will be making the vote as to who will be prime minister. It's the PLP, and if it's the PLP and the bits of the trade unions that get a look in terms of influence, who can be elected? It's all those people who've been allowed to stand within their constituency who haven't been deselected or who haven't been left out on a limb like Jeremy Corbyn has. Who can make a choice? Just a small number of people who owe their allegiances to Starmer. And what can you, if you say anything, what can happen to you? You can be excluded, silenced, or smeared. And what will cause you to remove Starmer from power once he is in power, when the alternative is a Tory or a David Lammy? Very little. So again, you'll be saying, oh, he's the best of a bad bunch. Look at what you've been able to achieve when Starmer doesn't have power. Have the left been able to reinstate Jeremy Corbyn? No. Have the left been able to keep Starmer to his various 10 pledges, even one of them? No. Has the relationship with members become less abusive? No. And if you really think why people are supporting him, I think the only saying that comes to mind is, if you're fooled once, then shame on you. If you're fooled twice, then shame on me. And I think Brian's falling into that trap, because it seems like saying, oh yeah, let's not have Liz Truss or Boris Johnson, and Starmer's better. But what is he better at, Brian? I can't see anything that Starmer's better at other than hiding his behavior and being able to deceive people into voting for him. And if the left is so dishonest that it wants power just so that it can allow the masses to be deceived, then I think we should be ashamed of being in the left. Lastly, I think there is a very important thing that we have to say, which is about Starmer, which are all traits, forgive me for saying so, but traits of a psychopath. and this seems very extreme, but look at the lack of guilt, the lack of empathy, the superficial charm, if you call blandness charm. These are all traits that we shouldn't be admiring and we shouldn't be putting into office. It's exactly the same traits that people like Boris Johnson and Liz Truss have. That's not to say they are psychopaths. I'm just saying these are bad traits. These are traits we usually associate with psychopaths. So why would we want, as a left, to get in behind him, to be abused within the party and then excluded from the party if we say anything, not have a choice, and then put him in a position of so much power that he can then hand out little tasty morsels to all those people on the left who can be bought up? I mean, this is completely stupid. In my opinion, what we should be doing, Crispin, is what we should have been doing 4 years ago, or slightly less than that, which is to organize on the left for a left party. And it's a shame that people like John McDonnell and the Socialist Campaign Group have not done that. It's a shame that Jeremy, I feel very sorry for Jeremy and what he has been through. And I can understand why he would not want to stand again, why he would not want to leave the party that he's been a part of for these cuckoos. But on the other hand, he owes a duty to us as those people who chose, the 17 million who voted for a left government, who were cheated out of it by the Labour Party, by the very bureaucracy you want to put in power. And that's what we need to do. We've left it too late, but we still need to get organized. And we cannot be getting Starmer into power. We need to be focusing on getting a good left alternative into power with decent people whom we can at least have some hope of for the future, for the trade unions, for us, and for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Deepa. Now I'm going to bring on Graham Bash, who answered the survey and want to speak. Graham?
Okay, well, Crispin, I disagree with everyone who's spoken.
That's good.
I think we've got to distinguish between two entirely different matters. One, at an electoral level, in the absence of a mass party of Labour being built by the next election, 2 years' time, do me a favour, it's not going to happen. So we can't be neutral between Starmer, rotten as he is, and the far right Truss leadership. Of course not. But at a political level, I'm deeply shocked by what comrades like Andrew Fisher and Owen Jones have said. I'm partly responsible for this. They were brought up in the LRC and briefing, and I helped educate them. So I've obviously done something wrong. I mean, but look at what actually Andrew has said. He's actually said that the conference speech shows the left is winning, and Starmer has slammed the door on New Labour. Is he real? This is absolute nonsense. It's not only wrong, it's really, really dangerous. Firstly, look at the context. Starmer represents the establishment faction in the Labour Party, which has won. It has undermined and brought down Jeremy. It's taken over the party, destroyed Labour Party democracy, expelled us, including me, isolated us, locked out the left. And at this very conference, which Andrew is lauding, they suspended Naomi, who won the NEC election. We've seen what happened to Angelo. But it's more than this. The real context is that Starmer is most likely to win the next election. And it will come to office at a time of acute economic crisis, wedded to whatever Owen and Andrew say, a neoliberal agenda. And more than that, it's facing a newly emerging resistance from the trade unions. And by incorporating a section of the left as the left wing of that rotten coalition, our comrades are marginalising the emerging resistance. And I think it's not only wrong, I'll put it bluntly, and you told us to be polite, I think that this kind of politics is criminal. And then they talk about the policies themselves at his of his conference speech. Yeah, there was the odd good thing about insulating homes, etc. The critical thing is that Starmer point blank has refused to support workers fighting for cost of living increases. And then there's the stuff about this public energy company. Well, this is hopeless because it leaves the power of the energy companies untouched and unchallenged. Tomorrow night, Red Lion will examine these policies, these energy policies with Alan Simpson and others. I hope you come on, Crispin and others. But look, there's an unkind phrase. You told us to be nice, but I'm just about pissed off with this. There's an unkind phrase that comes to mind, which is useful idiots. And we really need to wake up. So let's not get distracted about, oh, we've got to find an alternative to Labour in the next 2 years. It ain't going to happen. We can find some local candidates, if you insist, who will get a few hundred votes. But the real choice is a Labour government or a Tory government. I want Labour to win, and I want us to fight. It's an old slogan, vote Labour and fight.
Oh, thank you, Graham. A different view there. Now we've got another perspective here, which is from the Green Party conference. We've got Ekua and Joe Bird on the call.
Hi,
how
can you
are
hear
you
us?
doing? Yeah,
Yeah,
can hear
doing
you.
good.
Yeah. Now, I guess if you're at the Green conference, you're not going to be voting Labour. Is that right?
That's about right. I think even if I wasn't at the Green conference, I would not be voting Labour. But what I'm finding quite interesting is why are socialists ignoring the Green Party? It's a socialist party. As a Black woman socialist, I've finally found somewhere I've had a welcome, having 5 years of abuse as a Black woman within the Labour Party. So I do not understand why it's being ignored. Joe, I don't know.
Yeah. I've been listening for years for people saying we need a new party on the left, and then in a few years' time we'll still be saying that, because the experiments of Northern Independence Party breakthrough and other experiments will have been tried and failed. Actually, I found in the Green Party we have a party that's on the left. The Green Party supports energy companies in public hands, water in public hands, real-term pay rises, affordable warm housing. It puts climate change on the agenda. So if we have a future, it's green as well as red. I don't want to be voting for blue Tories or red Tories. We need to be voting green. Greens are a credible election force and a credible election vehicle. There's over 550 local councillors already elected as Greens. We're in the administration in power in more than a dozen local authorities across England. It's like, let's stop messing around. By the time we finish talking, there'll be a general election will have been and gone. We need to be voting green, getting green MPs into Parliament more than the one Caroline Lucas that we have already. And Greens come in second in a load of other places, so that next time around we're getting more green MPs, because Greens are the future. Like, we've already got the policies, all the policies that were in the manifestos for Labour, pretty much in the Green Party manifestos and policies now. Go on the Green Party website and have a look. That's where you'll find the policies, because the media don't cover it. We have to do our own looking on that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat actually as we're speaking, and I think let's look at the real issues that are here. The only parliamentary party, okay, with only one candidate, who actually publicly supported the RMT was the Green Party. So, if you're in Labour and you're thinking you're a part of a party that supports workers, look at the reality. That's what I would say. Look at the reality. We've just come from, we're at Green Party conference. We've just come from a Green Party trained union group meeting that we're both part of. And in reality, what we've got are councillors who are it was specifically about the role of councillors in terms of unions, who are actively working with their unions, with their workers, without the sort of level of control and bullying that I experienced, which made it really impossible for me to be a socialist. And I'd say there is no future for socialism if it's not inclusive. If you can go ahead in the party that has thrown out Jewish socialists and Black socialists at the level, then who are you actually speaking for? And the idea that he can come in power and then you'll change it, with what systems? What are the systems you're talking about that are going to change anything? Because you've all been trying to use them and work with them. We know they don't work. There is no democracy. There will be no opportunity to create change if Labour gets in power with Keir Starmer in power, then it's over as far as I'm concerned for working people in this country. However, if we have a significant Green presence, which I really think we can do, What we've got is an opportunity to work with that, to shape that. And people saying that we're not socialists, I think you haven't read. You're as much as we argue that MSM is not putting forward what socialist perspectives or what happened to Jeremy. And I came into the Labour Party drawn in by Jeremy. I'm part of that legacy, and I'm taking Jeremy's legacy forward by being a member of the Green Party. I'm not disrespecting it. And I'm also looking at shape. Where is there a chance to shape? I could not, and none of you, I think, can shape change in the Labour Party. And why start from scratch? It makes no sense. So for me, I've found a new socialist home where I can actually operate as a socialist in local government.
Okay. Well, look, thank you both for taking time out from the Green Conference. Good to see you. Thank you. Good to see you, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now, Roger Silverman has been sending me rather than a few messages saying I've got to speak now. And he used to teach at my school before I was there. And because of that, I think he'd better speak because he might give me detention otherwise. Roger.
All right, thank you, Crispin. Look, the arguments that Brian is making, and to a lesser extent Graham too, are certainly in Brian's case identical to the arguments that were being put about 120 years ago at the time of the formation of the Labour Party, saying that we have to support the Liberals. It's the Labour Party now is not a party of the working class. It is not a party, even a Labour Party. It's not based on the trade unions. It's a party which opens its conference now with singing "God Save the King." It's a party which where the leader has told members that they must not stand on picket lines. The Labour Party was set up precisely to defend the interests of trade unions and to stand for trade union rights. And Starmer has said in so many words that we are no longer a Labour Party. This is not a Labour Party. He said this is a centre party. Actually, that was not quite correct. It's a right-wing party. But if it's a centre party, that kind of implies that there should be the centre is somewhere between the right and the left. Where's the left party? We need a left party. We need a Labour Party. We have a situation where, as we've seen, anybody who speaks against NATO is suspended within an hour of speaking at a Labour Party conference. We have a situation where bona fide delegates to the Labour Party conference have their credentials torn up before they actually arrive. We need a party of Labour. The Labour Party was set up to defend trade union rights. So therefore, we need to create a party which defends the rights of the working class and the rights of the trade unions. And we cannot go along with the same pathetic and futile arguments that were put in favour of remaining within the Liberal Party in 1900. We need the trade unions to break away. We have to say congratulations to Ian Hodson and to the Bakers Union. Congratulations to the RMT who made that decision quite a long time ago. Some encouragement we should give to Sharon Graham in Unite, who has at least begun to disengage from the Labour Party. Now we're in a situation now where we have the most repressive government we have ever had in Britain. It's no less repressive and no less reactionary and no less anti-working class than the new governments we have in Sweden and in Italy. And we're at a time of the biggest class struggles we've seen in at least half a century. It's like the trade union struggles of the 1970s, plus the miners' strike of the 80s, and then on top of all that, huge mass social movements. Enough is enough. Don't pay. Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, which is all of which are kind of echo of the poll tax revolt of 14 million people in the late 1980s. We are seeing a huge struggle coming, and we need a party which reflects the needs and the aspirations and the interests of the mass of the population. We have strikes now involving not just traditional workers, not just postal workers or rail workers and so on. We have strikes of Amazon warehouse workers. We have strikes of barristers. We have strikes of junior hospital doctors. We have strikes of university lecturers. There is no forces that would be able to be used as blacklegs and strikebreakers in a new general strike as happened in 1926. Everything in society is pushing towards a new party, and it should be a new party of socialism. And dare I say it, it needs to be, and more people are understanding it, it needs to be a party of revolution.
Okay, well, thank you, Roger. Great to see you. Next, Brian and Ben. I mean, especially Brian. It's a lot of people talking against what you said. You're definitely coming in a bit later, Brian. Don't worry. I'm just going to get as many people as I can before 1:15. Ghada Karmi is on. Ghada.
Yeah. Look, I never thought I would be saying what I'm going to say just now in view of what's been happening to me. I mean, I need to tell you that I was expelled from the Labour Party in March of this year on a charge of, quote, anti-Semitism, which is completely ridiculous, as everybody understands. So, you know, I don't have anything to be grateful for with the Starmer leadership, and I have a lot of criticisms. I share everybody's view about the current leadership, the current state of the Labour Party. Of course I do. However, what I want to say rather agrees with what Brian said. You see, I think we're at a point where we have to ask what is important and what is more important. Now, the way I see it is that the more important is to get rid of the Tories. I mean, please think about it. If we continue to make these excellent points about a party of the left, a socialist this, an uprising from the trade unions, etc., etc., it's fine, but it doesn't get the Tories out when the election comes, when the general election. It's only 2 years. So the way I see it is this is a two-stage strategy. Stage one, get rid of the Tories. No matter whatever anybody thinks about how dreadful the Labour Party is, lack of an alternative, all the rest of it, the priority number one, get rid of the Tories. Then we go to the second stage of the strategy, which is we work to either change the Labour Party or create that alternative we're all very, very keen on. At least then you get a breather and you can then work on those issues. So it's really a two-stage process. And, you know, I just tell you, really, in the absence of proportional representation, in the absence of a really successful movement of the left, we don't have much choice. And so I want to say, against all that I believe in, that dreadful as the party is now, dreadful as Starmer and the leadership is, our discussion shouldn't really be, can I say, with the greatest respect, about how awful Starmer is, how awful the party is. Of course it's awful. I think we all agree. Our discussion should be in how do we get rid of the Tories.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ghada. Now, one more speaker before I bring back Brian, I think, and Ben. Right. Marisa, up in Yorkshire. Can you hear me, Marisa?
I can. I hope my silly 4G hotspot doesn't cut out. I'm still without broadband. Bloody nightmare. So I pretty much agree with everything that Ben said. I can't agree at all. As much as, like Ben said, I understand where Brian's coming from, where your last speaker's coming from. The Labour Party will never be changed. the grip that the right has on the party's mechanism is never, ever, ever going to be loosened. They are never going to let 2015 happen ever again. This fanciful idea that Starmer can get in and then we can all start being really lefty, you know, at conference, and we can start doing this, and we'll have a few more lefties in PLP. There won't be, because there are no left-wing PPCs. You know, everybody who's come through, I applied to be a PPC last year. Of course I didn't make it through, because they only have to have one look at my social media to know I was a Corbyn supporter and I'm on the left. And you know, the only people getting ready for an election next year or the year after are very much on the right. The PLP, you know, if Starmer's party does get in, the PLP will have even more people on the right, and they will close ranks even more tightly than they are now. We'll see even more authoritarian, anti-democratic behaviour. So it's total pie in the sky to think that we can win it back. The left will never be welcome in the Labour Party ever again. And I could not vote for them. I mean, yesterday, my local Labour Party that I've not been a member of now for getting on for a year, they were out canvassing for new recruits in Shipley Town Centre, and a friend of mine contacted me. She actually left the party before I did, and she contacted me to say that she'd had a conversation with our parliamentary candidate who the CLP voted for in July, and she picked a bad person in my friend, because my friend's very well informed, and she started talking about the Ford report, Labour leaks, and the Al Jazeera programme. And our PPC, our newly elected PPC, said, but Jeremy Corbyn's been found guilty of anti-Semitism. I mean, I'm sickened. I'm going to be writing to the CLP chair to ask her what the hell's going on. I mean, you know, how anybody is out saying things like that, I just find it appalling. But, you know, to even contemplate voting for anybody representing that party when they have done such terrible, terrible things to innocent people and accuse, I mean, you know, I have on my record, they suspended me, then they reinstated me, and then I was given a reminder of conduct, still basically, you know, just telling me not to be an anti-Semite anymore, pretty much, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, thousands and thousands of good people have been labelled anti-Semitic, and we're actually saying we're going to vote for these people. I mean, you know, it's about democracy, it's about our entire democracy, and if we put those people back in power and say that's okay, it's okay for people, for all of that stuff to, all of that terrible stuff to have happened, we're doing a huge disservice to our entire democracy, really.
Right.
And I could not do it.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you, Marisa. Your signal went right through to the end. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure how to do this. I think I'll start with Brian. No, actually, I'll start with Brian, and then, all right, we'll go with Ben first, and then Brian, right? Ben, because Brian was on first as a kind of mirror. What would you like to say to sum up, Ben?
So everything that I've heard just there, there's lots of interesting viewpoints coming at it from different directions. I think what Ghada was saying about you know, getting the Tories out, I completely sympathise with that objective, and I think it is important that when it comes to the next election that we do everything we can to undermine their position. I completely agree with that sentiment, and I think everybody on this call would. I think the big issue, and I think Marisa's absolutely summed this up, is we cannot endorse you know, the same activity, but just from a different regime, which is basically what the Labour Party is. I don't believe we can endorse that at all, which means it is incumbent upon us, everybody on this call, everybody on the left, everybody who calls themselves a leftist, to build a new platform, a new organisation to take the fight to the electorate ballot box, you know, avoid all of the social media outrage, the celebrity status fighting, which certain left media outlets will have us all pursue, as well as certain left parties as well. You know, we need to build something new, which is a pan-left organisation, which brings everybody in, which is about inclusion and not exclusion, to fight for a genuine socialist alternative. We've got 18 months basically to do this, and if we start this now, we can do it. If we don't start this now, if we don't pull together, if we allow certain key lightning rod issues to divide us, and I'm not going to mention what they are because it will cause a fight, you know, we need to pull together. And I think there's people actively working towards this end right now, and I'm hoping that they can actually achieve their aims. I completely sympathise with Brian's viewpoint, and I completely understand where he's coming from. It's a logical and I think sensible, viewpoint from this. Brian is an educated and insightful chap. I think we'd be stupid not to listen to him. But on this issue, I think he's absolutely wrong.
Right. Thank you, Ben. Brian.
Okay.
Over to you.
Okay. Well, look, you need to be clear. You need to be clear about this. If you don't vote for Starmer, you're allowing the Tories in. The Tories have promised tax cuts to their rich donors. I mentioned this man, Chris Benodi, look him up. They've packaged deregulation as red tape, getting rid of red tape. That's a con. It's actually license to exploit. So these rich donors want a license to exploit, which will make them even richer. Odie's worth about $1 billion. And he's probably made 100 million shorting sterling after dinner with Kwasi Kwarteng. So you either vote for Starmer or you let these people in. Now, the consequences of their strategy, which is cutting taxes, is that they have to balance the books. The only way in which they can balance the books is to yet again cut public expenditure. This is another round of austerity. I don't know about you. I live just outside Hastings. The number of food banks has trebled. I have been helping a charity, a suicide charity. I go running every morning with them, and the number of suicides has increased. This is dire stuff. So that's the story. If you don't vote for Starmer, you're voting for the Tories. You're letting them in. You've got to stop them. That's my view. Now, as I go through what people have said, I agree with almost everything. In many ways, I agree with Ben. We've talked about this in the past. I agree with Ben. We've got to organise on the left. I agree with Roger Silverman. Exactly the same. I agree with my almost namesake, was it Graham Bash? Vote Labour and fight. I'm a fighter. You've got to fight. Agree with all that. Deepa, organise on the left. I was a bit surprised she wrapped Truss in as one of her charmers, but there we are. And that's the point. Now, what's going to happen over the next, once Starmer gets in power, is he's going to have a hospital pass. There's no question about it. He is going to have the shittiest economy that anybody has ever inherited, including Clem Attlee. It's going to be awful. So he's going to be in deep trouble. The left should be organising to come in at the point at which public opinion has turned against him, as it certainly will because of the terrible economic situation. That's what we've got to do. I just cannot think of anybody who would want to let the Tories in and not voting for Starmer lets in. That's why Owen Jones is right, with all respect to your former teacher.
Right. Well, thank you, Brian. I think that's quite interesting that the economy will be in such a bad state that Starmer's not got a very good position
and sorry, just let me say, and there have to be more cuts. They've got to balance the books. Otherwise, the pound will go into freefall even further. We won't be able to sell government debt. Nobody will want to buy it. They have to balance the books. If they're going to stick to their tax cuts, they've got to cut public expenditure. It's as simple as that. It's just like living at home. And Starmer is a chance to change that around a bit. I agree as a Tory, writing for The Sun, what on earth? But there we are.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad. Thank you, Ben, as well.
Absolute pleasure.
Cheers. Now I'm going to show the results of our survey into this, which will interest both of you. We've got a few questions here for our subscribers. 968 subscribers. Will you be voting Labour at the next general election? Unbelievably, more answered no than yes, and there's a lot of don't knows. There's a lot of don't knows there. I mean, it doesn't look like a ringing endorsement for Starmer. The next one, would you prefer a Labour government or a Conservative government? I mean, that's clear. There were two people who voted, who said Conservative, but they didn't make even a percentage point. So it's 63% and rounded up, it's 37%, makes no difference. So most people would prefer a Labour government, but not that. It's not like 90% or anything. It's not that much more. Did Keir Starmer's speech at Labour conference make you look at him more favourably? Only 11% of our subscribers thought he made a big difference to them. So I think, in fact, Brian, you're not really saying that his speech made a big difference anyway, are you?
No, I'm not. I mean, Keir Starmer is pandering to the Tory press. He knows how. Blair did the same. Don't forget, Blair went and made love to Murdoch. He's doing that because he sees that's the way into power. I also think he's a natural Tory, but that's another point. But that's what he's doing. And that speech was absolutely pandering to the Tory press with just a little bit of let's nationalise power, you know. But that's what he's doing. He wants to get into power and he will say anything to get into power. Frankly, I hate it, but I don't mind it as much as I will mind a Tory government which is going to knock public spending again. You know, this bastard, George Osborne, invented austerity on the basis of a 60 billion deficit. You can wipe that out in one go if you've got all these tax dodging blokes like funding the Tory party to pay their taxes. Richard Murphy says there's 120 billion of unsaved tax, uncollected taxes. The HMRC, I'll finish. HMRC say there's 35 billion. Prem Seeker comes in about 70. You know, these are people who are running the country. We are being dictated to by a hedge fund manager. That's it.
Okay. Right. Well, look, so it's interesting that, I mean, it wasn't really about the speech that he made at conference, which seemed to be what Owen Jones and Andrew Fisher were saying, sort of turned things around for them. They're in that 11%, obviously. And the final, the other question is, do you think it is possible for the left to set up a mass membership political party? 56%. So more people think that that's possible than not. And I think that's also an element of what's happening with this discussion, because if there were another party, then we'd all be jumping into it, I'm pretty sure. And if there's a possibility, if people think there's a possibility of it, then that's quite hopeful to me.